Without further ado, and on behalf of United Way, we're all so glad you're here. But please give a big round of applause and a warm welcome to our fearless leader, Miss Wendy Peastrue.
Who made today possible. First and foremost, UTMC, our academic medical center here locally, is one of the crown jewels of our community. In fact, they leaned in and gave us this beautiful facility. Your chief medical officer is here. Jen Archer, out there somewhere, who is over the engagement for the health system. She has really worked tirelessly with us to make this happen. Now, Jen Archer's story is interesting because she started at United Way, and during the pandemic, when tens of thousands of children needed to be fed in this community, it was Jen Archer who was front line. She's taken that experience and brought it to UTMC and found ways for paths for our communities to work together. So thank you, UTMC. Also, thank you, Fifth Third Bank. Fifth Third Bank has always been a really big supporter of United Way's 211 and United Way in general. So we appreciate the fact they, too, have been a big sponsor for this event. Can't say enough about the Andersons, always at the table, always there to help families. That is an indelible mark in our community forever. Eastman & Smith, also a great organization, here at the table, helping sponsor this event. Focus CFO, Hartman Bogan, Mark Fieldstein and Associates, Aetna, Black Kite Coffee, Highland's a good friend of mine for a long time, and family friends, that sort of thing, love the Highlands, and then Park U Toledo. The thing is about these sponsors is when you see their names, they're not just folks who wrote checks. All of these folks, I know personally, they have volunteered, they have leaned in. A lot of them even got on a bus this summer when it was hot and gross outside and went to look at some farms in Mansfield, went to the prison where we learned a little bit about one of the innovation programs we're going to discuss today. If that isn't leaning in, I don't know what is. And that's part of our ecosystem discussion. How sponsors, how the dollars, how the people, how the human factor wraps around this. And so look forward to Ari talking a little bit more about that. Now, United Way got into this space, I think, we've always been convening, and we've been working very hard to create a community analytics center so we can better measure. We have 211 that puts folks in touch with resources. But during the pandemic, we were designated as the Emergency Operations Center for Food, which came as a little bit of a surprise to me, but volunteers throughout, everybody leaned in, they got it going. But you can't just leave it there. We have taken the data over the pandemic and following, and really researching that data to know how to better improve our systems, how we work together, how we measure, and ultimately fund programs. Now, that being said, I want to thank the University of Toledo Honors College because they really kicked off some of the research, not to mention our amazing food task force at United Way. These volunteers have spent the last couple of years poring over the research, giving us ideas and guidance, and so this has been a true community effort through and through. Now, when we talk about ecosystems at United Way, we always think in terms of course, our elected officials, our corporate funders, and the folks who lean in that way, our volunteers, and so it makes a nice mix of folks that have great ideas. But one of the things I want to stress, and I like this, I take this quote from Ari, healthy organizational ecosystems bring the spirit of generosity alive, and that is generosity of spirit. So, I want to talk a little bit about our electeds. I believe Teresa Gaddis is here. Councilmember Gaddis had the vision to put somebody in the city who will oversee the food work. And one of the outcomes is today, we need a food equity council that has stood up in this community, and it takes government support, it takes those designated positions to make that happen. So I want to thank the city of Toledo for getting on board with that. And then I also want to thank our other electeds who keep listening and learning and contributing to the conversation. Now today, before Dr. Mike Ellis, who, one of the things we were talking before, I'm a nurse from back in the day with an academic medical center in Texas, and we were talking about condition of people being the focus of this health system, the research all the way to the patient care, and then thinking about in community how we better support our patients and understand them. And I appreciate Dr. Ellis talking with us a little bit about that. But before we get there, Senator Sherrod Brown, since 2007, has been thinking a lot about the condition of food in the state of Ohio. He is somebody who actively participates with our United Way programming. He helped support our data conference years ago, and he's always checking in, getting information, and really trying to understand about the work from his position. So thank you so much, and then we will hear from Dr. Ellis following Chair Brown. Thank you.
Chair Brown, it's an honor to serve you and to serve all Ohio in the U.S. Senate. Thanks to United Way of Greater Toledo. Thank you for the University of Toledo Medical Center for convening today's food summit. As the first Ohioan to serve on the Agriculture Committee in about 60 years, I'm always working to find new ways to get food grown by farmers in Wood County, Fulton County, and all over Northwest Ohio, into grocery stores and onto our dinner tables. That includes the Farm Bill Wright every 5 years or so. In the past two farm bills, we've worked to include more programs for urban farmers and other innovative farming practices that are key to our local food systems. Now we're working to write a new farm bill, one that focuses on Ohio families, Ohio farmers, and access to healthy food for all of us. Whether it's including fresh fruits and vegetables in school lunch programs or creating new ways for small farmers to get their products into the food assistance program, we work to make sure the final farm bill includes zero cuts to SNAP benefits. Understand, particularly for new leadership in the House, they are targeting SNAP benefits. This happens far too often here. I don't think my colleagues know anybody, so they don't know they know anybody who benefits from SNAP. It's essential for so many families. We're not going to accept anything less. These ideas came from conversations I've had with farmers, with food pantries, with United Way chapters, with YWCAs, with community centers, with families across Ohio, because the best ideas come from individual Ohioans, not Washington. Thank you for the work you do for Northwest Ohio. You make a real difference. Thanks so much.
We appreciate your commitment to our community and the well-being of all of our families. And tell us a little bit about the work.
Thank you. Well, getting ready to introduce Ari. He said, don't give a biography, tell an anecdote or something. Tell your story about Zingerman. So before I do that, I wanted to say that our mission at the University of Toledo Medical Center is focused on improving the human condition. So and I think that we have a lot of synergy here, and that starts very locally with our own community. And the human condition is unfortunately a lot about suffering. That includes hunger, and it's our responsibility to help with that condition and to help provide whatever resources that we can, especially whether they be organizational and connecting people with the hospital or medical care. And with food gatherers that they have done, we aim to do something very similar here. My anecdote about Zingerman's is that I had the honor of being a battalion surgeon in the Army with an infantry battalion. And one day in our patrol base north of Baghdad, I got a package, and it was from my mother-in-law, and it had Zingerman's in it. So this is the first time, so this was either 2005 or 2006. This was the first time I'd ever had a Zingerman's, but it was a box of, I think, brownies. I didn't share them. No, actually, I did share them. I had one, but the thing about it is, you may or may not know that, obviously soldiers in the Army, they love each other, and sometimes that love is a little on the tougher side. So my Zingerman story is actually not just getting the brownies, it was throwing them at my medics, and like, hey, here you go, and that was our bond of love that we shared. Came all the way from the United States, and that's my Zingerman story. So that improved our human condition there. That's what food and meals do, and so welcome. We're happy to host this event, and without further ado, I'll let Ari do the rest of his biography.
Good morning. Good morning. Well, I wasn't going to start this way, but because you told that story, I'm going to tell a different story, which I think you'll like. So, it's about another serviceman who was in Iraq, and his sister lived he had been in Michigan. His sister lived in Ann Arbor, and we only heard the story later excited because all the brownies that were going to be inside. And then when he opened it, of course, he was very impressed. But here's the good part is that through conversations we found out about that, and we ended up sending him a box of brownies, which he shared. I'm thinking through it. And he's still a customer to this day. He lives in Alaska. And in a way, that is what the ecosystem is about, is through ups and downs, is helping each other to all get to good outcomes. And so, thank you for prompting that one. James Baldwin once wrote that the world changes according to the way people see it. And if you can alter, even by a millimeter, the way people look at reality, then you can change the world. The world changes according to the way people see it, and if you can alter, even by a millimeter, the way people look at reality, then you can change the world. So, I'm not going to change the whole world in the next 45 minutes. But I want to be able to just share with you a little bit different model of how we might look at the world when you use the term ecosystem. That's what I'm going to talk about today. Before I get into that, though, I'm going to give you a little bit of our story because some of you know it and many of you don't. I'm also going to say there's no PowerPoint today. Can you still handle that? You have workbooks, you know, and I think there's pens over there too. So if you haven't written anything by hand, I want you to loosen up a little bit. So I don't want anybody to have a workplace injury. Our insurance people are here. I don't want to raise the words count high. So just a little bit of Zingerman's history. If you like to look at pictures, there's a little Candyland version of our history on page 2 in your workbook. But my history, so I came from, and I'm going to talk fast so I can fit a lot in, but I came from Chicago to Ann Arbor to go to school at University of Michigan. I studied Russian history, which is a particularly painfully poignant major to have right now for obvious reasons. But we're not going to go on about that greatly, but I'm not going to. I also studied anarchism. Don't worry, anarchism is not rock throwing or chaos. It's actually the opposite of that. It's about human dignity and positive belief in people and equity and all the things that we all like, but it's got a bad reputation, just like there's people of all faiths, all walks of life, all races, all heights, ages that have done bad things. There are anarchists that have also done bad things, but it doesn't make the whole thing bad. Anyway, after graduating with my history degree, are there any other history majors here? A couple, okay, awesome. You all sat in front, I like that. There's nothing you can do with a history degree except get more degrees. That's what I was supposed to do. What do you do?
Build local food systems.
Oh, well, there you go. Thank you for doing it. I guess that's what we do too. So anyway, we do a lot of work around visioning. I could do a whole talk on that. I'm not. When I graduated, I had no vision whatsoever. I had only what David Wright, W-H-Y-T-E, the poet and writer who puts out a highly recommend, calls it via negativa. You might not know the term, but you might be familiar with this. It's where you're clueless about where you want to go, so you're really clear where you do not want to go. I don't recommend that as a great life path, but it's better than nothing. Eliminate some of the options. I knew I didn't want to go home. No disrespect to my family, but I wanted to get in a different ecosystem, so I decided I'd stay in Ann Arbor. One of my college roommates was waiting tables in a restaurant down there, or up there. If you're from Ann Arbor, you've been around a while, it was called Maud's, some of you might have been there. So I went in there, applied for a job as a server, because that's the job he had, seemed to like it. Once again, they didn't call me, so I went back after like 2 weeks. I reapplied as a busboy, and I said, hey, could I do that? They said, sounds good, we'll call you. I waited like 2 more weeks. I was running out of money, so I went back and offered to do anything. I'd never worked in restaurants, so I didn't know they weren't supposed to want to do this, but they said, you want to wash dishes? I said, sure, I don't know, whatever, I need a job. And they said, okay, can you start tomorrow? So that's how I got going. I'd love to tell you some fabulous story about how my mom was this incredible cook, and that I grew up on great food, and then we traveled the country eating in amazing restaurants, and from the time I was 12, I knew I was getting on my own place like I 40 years, and awesome, but not a good cook. The newest pamphlet I have out is about philosophy, which I did not study in school, but turns out we all have one. That's another talk again. But it starts out like this. Once every week or so, my mother fed us fish sticks. And then it goes on to detail the other highlights of my culinary upbringing: Kraft macaroni and cheese, Pop-Tarts, tuna pot pies from Banquet, tater tots, grilled cheese with Kraft singles, Wonder Bread, Nestle's Quick, Hawaiian Punch, I.C., Tang, green jello with pears was my mom's top dessert. So I had no focus on food, culinary background whatsoever, and I really just lucked out. Paul Goodman, the anarchist poet, philosopher, educator of the 20th century, said having a vocation is somewhat of a miracle, like falling in love, and it works out. And that's what happened to me, because all I did is take a job as a dishwasher so I could pay my rent, and I ended up falling in love with food and cooking and the food business, and I feel incredibly fortunate for that. I also feel incredibly fortunate because I met great people. So Paul Saginaw, who is actually the one whose idea was to start Incubators, I don't take any credit for that. I just take credit for saying, sure, why not? Sounds good. Let's do it. But he was the general manager at that restaurant. He had just been promoted from bar manager at one of their other restaurants, so his first day was my first day, which, by the way, says something in hindsight about the belief that we both had, is that the dishwasher and the general manager actually talked. Because in a typical hierarchical setting, I'm going to tell you that don't happen. Okay, so anyway, in hindsight, I'm going to mention beliefs today, and I've done a ton of work on it, and it's a whole day seminar that we don't have time to do today. But in hindsight, I had kind of negative beliefs about business. Like, nobody in my family was in business. They were all teachers, doctors, lawyers, dentists, psychologists, so I was like a failure of the family for not getting an advanced degree. Business mostly seemed like it did bad things to people. You know, I didn't like hate it, but it just didn't seem, I didn't even know like it was a career path you could choose. Paul quickly changed my beliefs about business. His dad was a dentist in Detroit, but his grandfather had a business in Detroit. His grandfather taught Paul what Paul taught me, and this belief still underlies our work to this day. What his grandfather taught him was that business was neither good nor bad. It's just a tool. And what he said is that, you know, in the same way you could take a hammer and hit somebody in the head and put them in this hospital at the ER, or you could take an identical hammer and build homes for Habitat for Humanity. It's not the hammer that's the problem, right? And so the same for business is that we could use business to do good work in the world, or we could use business to extract and cause a lot of pain, and obviously we're trying to do good. I don't want to spend a lot of time on my history, but I started prepping, line cooking, managing kitchens, so if you worked at restaurants, my background's all back of the house. I know you all won't believe it, but I'm a total awkward introvert. It's that hard to lead an organization without talking to anybody, so I tried. It didn't work, so I taught myself how to talk. But anyway, I stayed there about 4 years. Paul left about halfway through that to open my seafood market in Carytown. If you're from Ann Arbor, you'll know it's one of the best fish markets in the country. He and I had been friends. Fall of 1981, so a million years ago, 2 weeks ago, I gave 2 months' notice because it was time to move on. I didn't hate my job, it was just time to do something else. It was fine, but it wasn't great. And so I didn't know what I was going to do next. Paul called me like 2 days later. He said there was this little building coming open near the fish market, and he had grown up in Detroit where you could get good deli food, and in Chicago you could get it, you couldn't get it in Ann Arbor. And I don't know how the heck we went this fast, but like in a week we decided we were going to open it, and 4.5 months later we were open, which included redoing the floor, painting the walls, writing a menu, costing the recipes, writing the recipes. So March 15th, 1982 is when we opened. 2 employees, me and Paul, 1,300 square feet, which is like a tenth the size of this room, 25 sandwiches, 29 seats, and all the old Jewish stuff we had both grown up on, plus a little bit of what's now called specialty food, but at that time was mostly called weird. Because when you sold extra virgin olive oil in Ann Arbor in 1982, the most common comment from a customer would be, "Hey, extra virgin. How could that be? So I'm not going to dwell on our history. You got the whole Candyland version here. 42 years later, we're an overnight success. People are like, you grow so fast. I'm like, not really. It's like your 401k. You just grow a little bit every year. Over 42 years later, it looks like we grew fast. We're not on the fast track. We're on the natural, slow but steady track. You can see now, I don't know, we got about 700 people working in the organization. We do hire about 350 more for mail order in the bake house for the holidays, so if you have a teenager you're trying to get rid of. I'm from Chicago, it's not really a big commute from Toledo, you can send them up. And we'll do about $80 million in sales. As you already probably know, all our businesses are located within the Ann Arbor area. And that's not a cut on Toledo, Detroit, Chicago, LA, or London. It's just I got a very strong belief in the spirit of the ecosystem and doing business the way we do it. So there you go. That's the Zingerman story. Okay, somebody's got I don't need applause. Is there one like really big Zingerman's question you always wanted to ask, but you never had a chance? There may not be. I'm just giving you a chance. Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you never decided to franchise or go beyond Ann Arbor.
Yeah, it is interesting. So the question is, what's the question? The question is, why did we not? The question is, why did we not take the standard growth path, which is to open all over the place and open multiple units? So the quick answer, which was a lot more in the business books, and I could tell you a lot more than I'm going to fit in today, but number one, I'm really drawn to unique things. So I don't like replicas. I'm not cutting on them, but I like the places that you've been to 30 years ago, 20 years ago, and you still remember it in a really great way. And that's true in music, it's true in poetry. I wrote a pamphlet called The Art of Business. Is my belief that life is like music, art, or poetry. And if we imagine our lives like we're going to make a music somebody's going to listen to in 50 years, we pay a little more attention. And then I also have a very strong belief about doing business in the community where you live. I'm not cutting out people who don't. But I just, I'm a history major. It gets a little colonial when you're sitting in Ann Arbor telling somebody in Anaheim what to do. And everybody loves local now in this room. That's why we're here. But then they want a global application of what they like locally. I'm like, no, if we open in LA, it's not going to be the same. And somebody in LA needs to do it that shows up, that knows their community, that knows the people. So that's my belief. Okay. So Timothy Snyder is a historian of Ukraine and an amazing speaker, and his books are incredible, highly recommended. He said there have to be new ideas which will help us get out of where we are. So what I want to talk about today is one idea that it's not an overnight fix, because there are no overnight fixes, but it's an idea that has been in my mind since I wrote this giant book on beliefs like 7 or 8 years ago, and it's been growing like an ecosystem in a healthy way, and it's going to become the next book. The idea is, what you see up on the screen, is to stop thinking about our organizations, our community, our families, our wealth, and about our organizations or our businesses using the old mental models. I'm going to get into it more and start to think about it like an ecosystem, so that we can honor all these things and more, because it's a more complex version even than what's up there. But to start to hold the whole and not just look at the pieces in isolation. To understand that we're all part of something much greater than ourselves, and being in denial, which I'm good at, doesn't help. But you can pretend you're not connected to the guy down the block, but you are. We're all connected. Alain de Botton, the writer, philosopher, said, the knack of our species lies in our capacity to transmit our accumulated knowledge down the generations. The slowest among us can, in a few hours, pick up ideas that it took a few rare geniuses a lifetime to acquire. Yet what is distinctive is just how selective we are about the topics we deem it possible see that, but you have a copy in your packet, and we made these little posters too today that they got out there for you. It's the first time they showed up in the world. Whether we like it or not, all these things matter. Our beliefs have an enormous impact. Hope has an enormous impact. Generosity has an enormous impact. It has an impact on accounting. It has an impact on medicine. It has an impact on restaurants. All of these things are going on. And so my hope is that we can create a model that's going to change the way we look at the world. If you look at page 3 in your workbook, it says at the top why metaphors matter. So I'm not an English major, but I can learn. George Lakoff wrote an amazing little book called Don't Think of an Elephant. I would recommend it. He also wrote a lot about metaphors. He said, our ordinary conceptual system, in terms of which we both think and act, is fundamentally metaphorical in nature. All of our conversations, our stories, the way we think is all about metaphors. We don't even know we're doing it. But we say stuff like, he's killing it. They crushed it. Or here's an interesting one. That really went south. Lakoff also said new metaphors are capable of creating new understandings and therefore new realities. George Orwell, anybody heard of him? Yeah. He said the newly invented metaphor assists thought by evoking a new visual image. I want to evoke a new visual image of our organizations and our communities. What are some of the more typical metaphors that people use in business? And by the way, when I say organization, it's the same whether it's business, not-for-profit, a church, and a family. They're all organizations. Okay, so forgive me if I say business, but it's not about the money making. It's about people working together in the ecosystem. So the most typical models, you all know them. One is org charts. Who's seen one of those? Gary Hamel and Michaela Zanini wrote a really good book called Humanocracy. They said, ask just about anyone to draw a picture of their organization, and you'll get the familiar pyramid of lines and boxes. Formal hierarchy is simple, scalable, and seemingly timeless, but it's also a colossal liability. My goal is to get people to stop thinking of lines and boxes and start imagining your organization like this, so that you're thinking about the hope of the people who clean the rooms in your version of the hospital, because it matters. What's another metaphor? Machines. They just say this all the time. He's like a machine. Get the gears running. Rev up our engine. See, if the organization's a machine and something broke, what do? You just get it fixed. We order a new part. Then it's all good. But in an ecosystem on a farm like y'all, I'm just a history major from the city, but you can't just order a new part on a farm and it's all fixed. I live with a farmer. But you can't just order new soil and then it's all fine. It doesn't work that way. What's another one? Military. All due respect to people in the military, absolutely. But business doesn't have to be about crushing competition. It doesn't have to be about winning and losing. Again, said with respect. Another metaphor, sports. I'm very good at sports metaphors. But again, it's winning and losing. I grew up in Chicago. What do we watch? John Paxson making that last shot with 3 seconds left. So the Bulls could win the NBA. You know, it's awesome, man. I love it. But here's the thing. Life is not about making one shot with 1/10 of a second left. The ecosystem is not fixed or lost. The ecosystem is not healthy or unhealthy because one person made one shot. So I'm not down on sports, but to change an ecosystem is a lifetime of work. Gary Hamel also wrote about these metaphors and what were designed to be inhuman. Max Weber, who's the guy who wrote initially about bureaucracy, noted more than a century ago, bureaucracy develops the more perfectly, the more it is dehumanized. So the more you remove emotion and humanity, the better the organization's going to be. This is nuts, y'all. I'm just saying. So this work is about switching the metaphor so that we think in harmony with nature, not in opposition to nature. Who's heard the phraseology that, we're going to download some new software for our brain, like the brain's like a computer? Has anybody heard that or used that? Okay. See, if your brain was just a computer, why don't we just all download the kindness software and all the problems in the country would be over? But the problem is, it doesn't work like that because the brain is not a computer. There's an ecosystem in our head, too. And there's no quick fix for an unhealthy ecosystem. It's a long, long process. It can be repaired 100%, but you can't go from having all negative beliefs to all positive ones with software. Whereas my computer, I call IT, and the next day it's on there. Is this making any sense?
Yes.
Okay. So, on the next page is just a list of some of the reasons, which I'm not going to detail all of them now, but why I like this model. Andreas Weber is a young German biologist, and he writes a lot about what he called poetic ecology. And I like that, poetic ecology. He said, I call it poetic ecology because it is poetic, because it regards feelings and expression as necessary dimensions of our lives. Right? There's no feelings in a machine. He said, I call it ecology because all life builds on relations and unfolds through mutual transformations. In other words, we're all in it together, y'all. We don't have to like it, but it is. So he calls it poetic ecology. I call this poetic organizational ecology. Here's some of the highlights of why I like it. I like it because it encourages health, not domination. It encourages us in a farm, in an ecosystem. Health builds upon health. I don't know, I wouldn't have known this as a city kid, where the only farm we went to was the one at the Museum of Science and Industry. And I grew up, learning to love weaving in and out of rush hour traffic and sitting in a hot corner of a hot parking lot on the asphalt is where I would feel safe, But there is nature out there. In nature, number 5, everything impacts everything else. See, we're raised with the belief that we're just on our own. But there's despite the mythology, none of us are self-made people. And I said it to a smaller group earlier. Somebody drove the bus to get us to school. Somebody wrote the textbook that taught us to learn. Somebody taught us to read. Somebody made us lunch. We're all products of other people. Zingerman's can't exist without all the other people. The truck, the person who drove the truck, the person who paved the road, the person all over the world that are making what we do happen. In nature, number 8, it's not hierarchical. This is also anarchist, by the way. Yes, there's operational hierarchy. We're in the hospital. The surgeon makes the final decision in the operating room. But the surgeon is not a better person than the man or woman that cleans the room. Yes, there's a quarterback that calls the plays. Yes, there's a conductor of the orchestra. Pick your metaphor. But they're not a better human being. In nature, this is the way it is. It's unnatural to create those kind of hierarchies. But we've been raised with those beliefs. Number 17. In an ecosystem, it's about win-win-win. The idea that ecosystem is not win-lose. It's not beat the competition. It's not crush crush the competitor. It's not dominate the market, which is all the metaphors that we all get raised with in business. It's how do we create health? Because everything matters. And yeah, the bears are bigger than the bees, but if there's no bees, what happens? They don't work, okay? So everything matters in small ways. The industrial model, which is where all these machine metaphors and stuff came from, is the other way. Find the one thing, get rid of everything else that's cluttering up your workspace. Just do that one thing, make a lot of money, and then buy all the rest. But the problem is, you can't just do one thing. Is this making any sense?
Yes.
Are there any questions on this list before I move on? Because there's a lot of them on there. I got to put my glasses on to see your hands.
Can you talk about number 16, health attracts health?
Yeah, so here's the reality. You were thinking that too. So in sports, using the sports metaphor, in sports, the worst team gets the top draft pick, right? It's supposed to create equity. It doesn't really work quite the way it's supposed to, but that's the idea of the system. The worst team gets the top draft. In poetic organizational ecology, the best team gets the best draft pick. Why? Because people who don't want to work hard don't apply at Zingerman's. People who don't care about what is happening don't come to us. Who comes to us? People that want to make a difference. People that want to learn. People that want to feel good about their work, that it's contributing to the community. People who want to believe that we're buying from vendors who are making a difference in their communities. The one who wants to just punch the clock, not saying they're bad people, but they don't go there. Health attracts health. This is one of the biggest challenges as we work to create broader geographic equity. And I'm not cutting on neighborhoods that have less. We need to figure out how to attract health back into the places that have had less health through centuries, decades of systemic problems. It's not a quick fix. Does that help? Like, if you feel good about yourself, you're high hope, and you have positive beliefs, you're not hanging out with a lot of cynics. That's what it's about. Yes, ma'am?
This is excellent paper stuff, by the way.
Thank you. I'm reading Mark Kurlansky's book on paper. I just started it. I like paper. Thank you so much. That made my day. In fact, the books, we print the books locally, and we were self-published in part because I didn't like the paper stock that the big publishers wanted to use. Because they wanted cheap paper. And I'm like, our customers want, I want a book that feels like our food. It's true.
Nice. Can you talk about number 10 for both observers and participants?
Whoa, about number 10.
Yes.
I have to look what it did. Oh, yeah. So part of the mythology, the inaccurate, I would suggest, beliefs about nature that we have been raised in the industrial Western world is we're in charge of it. Like we're the boss of nature, and we could be a better boss, but it's not. But the reality is we're just part of it. So part of what we have is the cognition to be able to impact it in ways that a bear or a beaver may not have, but nevertheless, we're in it. And so what I like with this model is that I'm leading, but I'm also in the ecosystem. So it's impossible to assess me outside of the Zingerman's ecosystem, outside of the Ann Arbor ecosystem. And people ask these theoretical questions all the time, like, well, what if you had opened here? I'm like, I don't know, we didn't. Humberto Maturana, the Chilean biologist, passed away during the pandemic, but he's a scientist, I'm not, but he said it's impossible to truly assess anything outside of its ecosystem. Does that help?
Yes.
Okay, so let's look not at the picture, because you got it up on the screen behind me, but on the next page. So the whole key of this model, and there's a lot more to the model than what's on the page, but we gave you the simpler one for this morning's short talk. So I started to think about this when I was working on this book on beliefs. So I do an e-news. By the way, my email is ari@zingermans.com, so you're welcome to email me as well. I like to I'm an introvert. every week. If you email me, I'll send it back to you. It's about the self-fulfilling belief cycle. It's because I don't use PowerPoint. I wear this shirt that Underground Printing in Ann Arbor made because I presented on beliefs for them. So you can't really see it, but the point is, it's a self-fulfilling belief cycle. And I saw this on page 109 in Bob and Judith Wright's book, Transformed. 10 years ago, it blew my mind, and I started studying and studying and studying like a good history major, and it turned into a 600-page book about beliefs. And then I'll keep learning more still. So, but and until that, I had never thought about beliefs. And I clearly knew the word, I'm not dumb, but I never thought about beliefs. When I say beliefs, I'm not talking religion, sports, and politics. Those are also beliefs, but these are the three categories everybody likes to talk about beliefs. I'm talking about beliefs about human beings. Beliefs about human nature, beliefs about food, beliefs about equity, beliefs about diversity, beliefs about coffee, beliefs about books, beliefs about work, beliefs about days of the week. We got tons of them. Based on our beliefs, we take action, and it turns out every action we take is based on what we believe. Other than an instinctive response, or so we throw some at it. Based on our action, the people around us form beliefs of their own. Based on their beliefs, they take action. What blew my mind is it's a self-fulfilling belief cycle. 95% of the time, their action will reinforce the original belief. I'll give you a very quick example. Let's say you worked in an organization that the CEO, leader, founder, president, whatever, she or he believed training was a waste of time. It's not a trick question. What action would they take? No training. If you worked in an organization where there's no training, no development, no seminars like today, what would you believe about the job and your future there? Not very good. What kind of work do you do when you believe there's no future in that job? Not very good work. And the CEO leader goes, thank God we didn't waste any money on training. Look how bad. It's the truth. If you flip the belief of the leader, now she or he believes what we believe, and probably y'all believe, which is training and learning are a great idea. What do? We got like 60, 70, 75 internal, I'm not talking about Zingerman or training, but internal classes for our staff. Finance, personal finance, business finance, visioning, customer service, salt management, yada, yada. What do you start to believe, even if like many of the people who work for us came to work there for 3 months or 6 months or a year, what do you start to believe about the potential to grow? It's good. When you believe there's potential to grow as a human being and you feel believed in, what kind of work do you do? And we go, this training's awesome, let's do more. The crazy reality is it's the same workforce in both stories, y'all. Change the belief, you change the outcome. Okay? If we believe that our coworker's a jerk, I'm going to tell you, it's not going to go well. So I could go on this for days. I said earlier to a smaller group, I like simple models that honor complexity, which is what this ecosystem is. 3 broad categories of beliefs. I started thinking of beliefs as the root system of our lives because we don't see them, but everything that comes up above the surface is always related to the roots. 3 broad categories: negative beliefs, neutral beliefs, positive beliefs. Super simple. If beliefs are a root system, what sort of outcome are you going to get from negative beliefs? Negative outcomes. Neutral beliefs don't do much. Positive beliefs create positive outcomes. Here you go, y'all. You cannot get positive outcomes from negative beliefs. It's impossible. You can make trouble, you can get divorced, you can quit your job, you can be cynical and complain and feel good for 10 minutes, you can overthrow governments, you can tear countries apart, but you cannot create positive, healthy ecosystems out of negative beliefs. Negative beliefs could be everything from my cousin's a jerk to racism, anti-Semitism, and believe women can't be leaders. Where do beliefs come from? Don't say Amazon. It's all learned, which means they can be changed. I'm not saying there's no problems, there's lots, but you could have positive beliefs about a problem or negative beliefs about a problem. Negative beliefs about a problem is victim mindset. Positive beliefs is what created food habits. It's our root system. If you have an ecosystem, it could be at your church, your basketball team, your family, a town that's dominated by negative beliefs, what's going to grow? Weeds. Okay, if you're 40 years old and you got the belief when you were 1 from your parents, like we all got them, that root's been growing 39 years, y'all. It's not coming out in a week. politics, but they actually have wholly different beliefs. And I don't mean it's going to be fixed by just saying that we have belief, but at least we can talk about the right thing. Because we're arguing over the plant, but if you don't change the roots, the plant's going to be the same. And by the way, if you pick a weed at the surface, what's going to happen? It grows back stronger. So getting people to stop saying the wrong words is maybe good, but it just comes back. Because they didn't actually change what they believe. Okay? Hope is the sun. Why? Because all plants grow towards the sun. I've got a bunch of essays in the police book about hope. I wouldn't have known anything about it. Turns out people with low hope, guess what? Don't do good work. Why? Because if you have low hope, you become reckless. If you have low hope, you become passive. It's not somebody's fault that they were raised with low hope. It's our job as a community to raise the hope, because the ecosystem can't be healthy without appropriate sun. We know this. And plants grow towards the sun, right? Have you ever seen plants growing like what we would consider crooked because they're going towards the sun? Sometimes hope is provided by what I'm going to suggest are not positive places. I'm a history major. Hitler provided hope to German people that were in despair after losing World War I, and they followed. And I'm going to let you draw the conclusions from that without me going there. The soil is the culture. Plants grow in soil. If you put a great plant in unhealthy soil, what's going to happen? It's not going to do well. Can you change the soil quickly? No, it's years and years and years of work to build the culture. We do training all the time, and they're like, we've already been working at this for 6 months. I'm like, the minimum in organic agriculture to go from conventional to organic, minimum is 3 years. Why? Like you stop spraying today, but you still got to wait 3 years. Why? Yeah, it doesn't just go away because you stop spraying. And it's commonly said in organic agriculture that pesticides don't stop at the fence line. So if people leave a workplace with negative beliefs, it doesn't just magically turn positive when they go home. These things are going on in all of our organizations. You can see the list on there. What are mushrooms? So mushrooms in nature are small, but they actually provide enormous, what's called ecosystem services. They provide a lot of health. You don't notice it if you're trained like I was in the city to look at big buildings. Mushrooms seem problematic at worst and irrelevant at best, but they actually provide a ton of positive feedback into the soil, into the culture. What are mushrooms in an organization? It's the people that aren't in charge, but they help keep the culture healthy. They don't want to be in charge. I guarantee you, I've never been in this hospital in my life, but I guarantee you there's nurses, there's sanitarians, there's people working in a cafeteria that got no title. They are not on the org chart. But they are providing positive cultural development, and every organization has them. And also there's poisonous mushrooms, which are people with a lot of negative beliefs, and they're not in charge, but they're putting poison into the organizational culture. Is this making any sense? Generosity is water. We need to have water for stuff to grow, just like we need to have sun for stuff to grow. I was just talking to a friend of mine in San Francisco who does a lot of work with nonprofits, and he's like, I'm just so frustrated with it. They don't do anything, and they send us all this money in. It doesn't work because it's too much, too fast. Think about it. If you got dry, cracked soil from a drought, and you throw a ton of water on it, what's going to happen? It's going to run off. It needs to be steady, slow and steady, so the culture can revive itself slowly over time. Otherwise, it just runs off or drowns everything. Purpose. I was reading Rebecca Solnit's book. I love her writing. She said, I know she didn't make this up, but I learned from her, like, give you credit. So she said in a riddle, what goes faster uphill than downhill? The answer is wind. I wouldn't have known that. And I was like, this is perfect for this model. Because takes years for... So this is how I started to look at all this stuff. It's just, like if I give you a class on beliefs, you'll be excited about beliefs, and within 3 weeks you'll be back to mostly what you were doing before. I'm not cutting on it, it's true for me too. If I give you another class 6 months later on hope, you're going to love it. I got 6 ways to build hope. It's actually a skill that we can practice. It's not that hard. We can do it well in 60 seconds or 2 minutes. We can do it badly, equally badly. I've done both. You'll be excited about hope, but then you'll move on. What I wanted is some way to just like hang this thing in front of your desk or by your computer or in your bedroom, like so that when you make a decision, you think about how will this impact the hope of the people in my ecosystem. And that ecosystem might be your 8-year-old, it might be your great-grandfather, that ecosystem could be the employees, but how will this impact their hope? What are the beliefs that underlie it? Because farmers can't just say, I'm going to work on the soil for 2 years, then I'll get back around to watering. It doesn't work that way in nature. Okay? On the next page, just a few things to share, and then we'll move towards wrapping up. So, in nature, the healthiest ecosystems are the most diverse. This is just true. I wrote a whole essay in the first book on natural laws of business. There's another 12 that aren't in that book that I have been writing about. One of them is the healthiest ecosystems in nature are the most diverse. You don't have to like it. It's just true. As a history major, I don't really understand why gravity works, and I'm not joking, but I know which way this paper is going and how I go. I don't understand, but I know how to make a decision accordingly. Like I don't have the belief it's going to go up, and me telling you it's going to go up is not going to make it go up. The healthiest ecosystems are the most diverse. It's just true. We want a healthier ecosystem, we need to make it more diverse. Love is present in healthy ecosystems. It could be your family, your religious institution, a hospital, a business, a restaurant, a basketball team. Love is present. It's just true. And we can choose to bring love. It's in our 2032 vision. Vision, by the way, is what we build in the ecosystem. So one reason that I want to go all these other places is they're planning businesses that are not appropriate for the ecosystem. Wendell Berry, who's now like in his late 80s from Kentucky, he said what they do is like cookie cutter on dough. No offense to Best Buy if you work there, but it's the same in Anchorage, Alaska as it is in Alabama. It doesn't make any sense. My girlfriend's a farmer. Nobody calls her and goes, Tammy, we love what you're doing with these heirloom tomatoes and peppers. I'm going to raise $2 billion and we're going to open tan shop farms like you got all over the U.S. Like when I say that, you laugh. It doesn't make any sense. And that's why I want a business, a vision that's appropriate for the ecosystem in which we are in. Okay? I wrote a lot about vision. Dignity is how we show up. And I want to just say, if everybody in this country was treating everybody with dignity, regardless of different beliefs, it would go a lot better. Okay, and I got a lot I've written about dignity that came out of the Russian invasion, but it's a whole other talk. But I believe we can create a revolution of dignity, where people are, their humanity is honored, where we're authentic, but not by acting out. That people have a say that's meaningful. That we start with positive beliefs, not negative beliefs. Believe everybody's trying their best and is going to do their best. That we help everybody get to greatness, no matter where they came from, no matter what they got now. That we can help everybody get to greatness, and when we work to create some reasonable level of equity. How do we get to equity? I don't have an easy answer. One thing that's not, and then I'll wrap up, that's not on this ecosystem, but I've added other things like joy with butterflies. Because we know in nature, when the ecosystem is unhealthy, the butterflies go away. When it becomes healthier, the butterflies come back. On Wednesday, December 6th, I'm doing a talk with my friend Gareth Higgins about stories and beliefs together. He and I simultaneously, he was in Ireland and I was here, we both started emailing. Stories are birds, because birds come back to healthy ecosystems health and strength of the nation. So the culture that we develop is critical. So I'm going to take 2 minutes of questions, and then I'm going to wrap up and get you on to the rest of the debate. I hope this is helpful. Did I scare you? Are you okay?
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you talk about soul?
I can. I got way more to say on all this. So, John Donahue, the Irish philosopher, said our soul really knows what we want to do. And I like the moon because it's easy to not pay attention to the moon. And yet, the moon pulls us. The moon pulls the tides. And in our heart, in our soul, we know what's right. But it's very easy to not pay attention to it. And especially for somebody like me who's a city kid, growing up in the mid-20th century with a lot of technology and science, like, I didn't grow up in a family that was practicing biodynamics. You know, but in the end of the day, our soul is taking us to where we want to go, and whether we honor that or not, it's up to us. And every organization has a soul too, I would suggest. And the vision that we write needs to be, I believe, aligned with our organization. Does that help, Ryan?
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am.
Earlier you said that you were an introvert and you
Yeah.
tried very hard to run the organization by being behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And the number one fear is public speaking, and you've
Yeah.
captivated all of us. And you said, I self-taught myself.
Yeah.
What did you do?
The question is, how did I teach myself how to not stand like this and hide it? Because I had a vision of what we wanted to do with the organization, and then I needed to. So, on the list of natural laws of business, which is another talk, number 9, is that success means you get a better problem. The best problem food gatherers could have is there's no more hunger, and we got to figure out how to find jobs for all those people. Like, please, Dad, give me that problem. Okay, so then I had to choose which problem did I want. Did I want to not get to the vision that we had for the organization, or did I want to suck it up and figure out how to take a lot of deep breaths and get in front of people? And then all I did is like think of all the people that bored me, and think of all the people that didn't bore me, and the ones that kept me awake were the good ones to learn from, and then how to do it in a way that's true to me too. Sir?
How do you differentiate between values and beliefs?
That's a great question. So, at first I wasn't sure, but having worked on it for a long time, here's what I would say. Values or principles are also beliefs, but they're the ethical ones. They're the ones like human dignity. We're not interested in changing those. But there's a lot of other beliefs that we have that aren't really about ethics. Okay, so I'm not saying good or bad, but like, I'm not religious. I live with a farmer. We don't have kids. We got a lot of dogs. They don't know what day of the week it is. I've been working in restaurants for 45 years. We're open on Sunday. So like working Sunday doesn't make it, it's the same as working Tuesday. Like I could care less. But other people, they feel like they got put, it's terrible that they have to work on the weekend. I'm like, I don't know, weekend, like whatever. It's the same as the week. Like I honor every day equally. It's not judgment of one's good or one's bad. So we actually wrote a statement of beliefs a few years ago that after 2 years of working on it, arrived at 34 beliefs. Very simple one. Asking for help is good. What's the tip? I don't like a stereotype. But if you want to stereotype American belief about help, what would it be? Yes, we. So we need to tell people when they come in. At home, you can be as tough as you want. But when you're here, please, we want you to ask for help. So that's a good example of a belief that's imperative for us, but it's not about ethics. Does that help? Okay, we could keep going a long time, but I know I'm out of time. So I just want to wrap it up. My email again is ari@zingermans.com. I welcome the conversation. I want to thank you all for what you do, because our ecosystems are better because of your work. And I want to say I'm not here to tell you what to do, because you all know your work infinitely better than I do. And I just want to try to, my belief is that the more we think like this, sit with it for a while, reflect, think about the beliefs in your family, in your organization, in the nonprofit part. Think about the hope level. think about the spirit of generosity. I don't mean just donate. Spirit of generosity. Think about humility. Because they're all playing out in every ecosystem, whether we're in denial like I grew up, we're actually honoring the ecosystem. I really believe that we can create an ecosystem where health is something that everybody can access. We're in a great hospital. We're in a great place right now. I believe that we can create where community building is more important than building capital, where the ecosystem is more important than the ego, where humility is more honored than hubris, where we're looking out for each other rather than looking over our shoulder for who's coming against us, where collaboration is more important than competition. I believe that's possible. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, who marched with Dr. King, and said his praying was with his feet. He said, in a free society, some are guilty, but all are responsible. It's our garden. Let's make it good. And if you want a super simple version of this, they got a great proverb in Ghana that says, if the yam doesn't grow, don't blame the yam. Thank you.
I can't thank you enough because today you have set the tone for some conversations that we're going to have. Now, if you're interested in his books, which with the good paper and everything, and really more importantly, the good messages.
And we're off of Amazon. We're like farm to table for books.
Fortunately, we have that table right outside here, and you can go ahead and look at the books, take advantage of that. Also, we'll send you links to Zingtrain and some of your lectures, your blog. I mean, there are countless resources through this organization, and I was fortunate enough before I came to United Way, I was working with food gatherers in Ann Arbor. I got the benefit of Zingtrain and spending time learning a lot about sort of this vision and then how do you take this other places. So take advantage of Ari's wisdom and his ideas and the things that he brings to us and how we take that with our work forward. Now, when we have our innovation section coming up in a minute, this is going to be huge because the moving parts to make innovation in the food systems work and all the great people who are doing great things come together, it's going to take this. So I like the fact that this is available to tape up somewhere, and when you're having one of those days, keep referencing it, keep going to that. So Ryan, I believe you have some instructions for us for next steps.
Did you guys get a lot out of that? Yeah, I think so too. I did too. Thank you so much, Ari, for being here. We're going to keep this rolling, and our next guest, what we're really here to talk about is food policy councils, right? And that's one of our hopes for today is what we're going to get out of this is really the next steps to how do we reinvigorate a food policy council. So please give a warm welcome to Jill Clark from the Ohio Food Policy Network.
But what is so amazing is that you mentioned so many authors that we have in common. Wendell Berry, Lankoff, Faber, right? We're reading the same things. And hopefully you get the sense that I did as I was sitting up there, like, that was like the perfect entree into what I'm going to talk to you about. I've been invited to talk about food policy councils. And I really appreciate being asked here today and allowing me to come up, I-75. We usually make you folks come to Columbus, so it's good to get out of Columbus. Anyway, just because you've been sitting for a little bit, I think this will help with a point I want to make later. Go ahead and I'm going to call out some different sectors. And if you identify with that sector, go ahead and stand up. So if you're working in the faith community, anyone in the faith community? All right, thank you. All right. How about hunger relief? Okay. How about health care? Public health. talk about food policy councils, like, why do we talk about local food policy? Like, it's actually kind of new-ish, right? And the reason is, we've got, well, there's multiple reasons. But I like to think about the food supply chain as an hourglass. Right? We've got a lot of producers, we've got a lot of consumers, a heck of a lot more consumers, and this pinch point in the middle. And ever since World War II, we've had this really radical restructuring of the food system that made a lot less folks in the middle with a lot more power. And that increasingly consolidated middle part, it's created a food system that has low cost and abundance for most, not all. But it's also, and a lot of research shows this, that it benefits the concentrated and consolidated agribusiness businesses that are international in nature. They're winning out. But who doesn't win out, right? Marginalized farmers, particularly small and mid-sized farmers. Think about the decline of the food dollar, right? The dollar, like every dollar you spend, and a fraction that goes to the farm. Increasing environmental fragility. We have a lot less trust for consumers. We didn't talk about the myriad diet-related diseases. We have food retailers moving out of our most urban and our most rural areas. 7 out of the 10 lowest paid jobs are in the food system. And all of this, these consequences, are felt locally. Oh my goodness, I'm going.
That's right, how many
There we go.
PowerPoint?
Yeah, exactly. I was going to do interpretive dance this morning. I had to drive up, and so I just wasn't prepared. Okay, so if we feel these problems locally in our communities. So if federal policy is giving us the current conditions, right, our global food system, we have to come up with an alternative vision that serves communities and benefits community members and thinks about things like justice and resilience. And think about the shift going from, by the way, I'm also a professor at OSU, so I think I've got some previous students in the audience. Think about the shift from, we've talked about this, from the idea of household food security to community food security. From the language of consumers and producers to food citizens. And so local policy gives us this opportunity. Local policies can be more accessible. They can foster greater civic engagement and democratic practice. Address issues of local concern and these sites of trial and error. I'll get to that in a minute. But where do we do that? Like, where do we start? Okay. I cannot find who said this originally. This was said a few decades ago. There are no departments of food. Where would we start? I could make arguments to you that in local government, transportation should be involved. Refuse collection, social services, public health, planning and zoning, economic development, and the list goes on. There are rarely any departments of food in the United States. That is changing a little bit. And so this, on one hand, is really frustrating because then who are your local champions, right? But on the other hand, represents this really amazing opportunity to work in new policy spaces. And I love what you said about old mental models. When we're working in local food policy, because it's new, we don't have to be burdened by that. And we don't have to be burdened by the path of dependency. We've always done it this way, right? And it's shown that new partnerships can create, new coalitions can create in these areas. And this is basically the role that local food policy councils play. See, you've got a lot of really interesting parts of the food system represented here today. And it's across the public and private sectors. And when I say private, I mean private for-profit and private non-profit, right? And also community members. And they have in common that they pull from different sectors, they aim to reform policy, and they work across issue areas, and they do this through democratic practice. And I use the term governance here, really to signal, right? This isn't government alone, right? This is a collective effort governing the food system, in essence, acting as those departments of food. And there is this emphasis on direct democracy. We've got just a couple of inspirational quotes here that I like. I'll let you read them. And she's at a public policy school, so democracy is our jam. And then, if anyone knows Kate Clancy, provide space to have conversations where we can learn from each other. Act as community resources to others, assess the food system, build partnerships, foster coordination between those sectors, raise awareness for issues, and agenda setting is probably one of the primary things that food policy councils do. Food policy councils don't actually enact policy, but they do advise. Sometimes are really integral in developing programs, as far as like fostering like startups. And these photos are from Mark Willis, who is from the Montgomery County Food Equity Coalition, so in Ohio. All right, but taking a step back, like what is food policy to begin with? And local food policy just attempts to influence people's decisions. And I really like the way that Tim Lang puts it. It influences who eats, what, when, where, I put the where in there, and how, and whether people and animals eat and with what consequences. Where, I'm a geography PhD, so I kind of had to put my mark on this. But I think it's important because communities are always more than that. It's about how government spends money. It's about the plans that government makes, and we've got a local planner in the room. It is also about that little key policy, the way we go about doing things. Think about a school cafeteria. You want to encourage healthy eating. My sister single-handedly came up with a policy across the Olentangy schools to rearrange the way that fruit was placed. And by God, those kids were eating a lot of the fruit. Okay? That's a little key policy, right? Like it wasn't like codified somewhere. It's just like, we're going to do this differently in local government. Think about the way people sign up for programs. Right? Or think about the way outreach is done. And so all these things that we do on a daily basis. And all these different types of policies can be targeted to different parts of the supply chain. Okay? So for instance, you can have zoning that impacts where things are grown. You can also have zoning that impacts whether or not fast food can be located somewhere. You can have an informational campaign that promotes local food consumption. You can also have an informational campaign on responsible composting. And I keep bringing up composting because it's a hot issue in one of our neighborhoods in Columbus. And food policy councils are often identifying the issues, connecting like kind of the needs here, serving to legitimize the issues, creating linkages to have those conversations. And I think about, like, for instance, our food policy council in Franklin County connected city public health to county economic development. And those two entities came together to create a plan for investments in the food system. And food policy council has been steadily increasing. This blue line, the yellow one is tribal nations, the blue is U.S. And they've been steadily growing since 1981 when the first one was created in Knoxville. And one thing to note, it's not as if they go and they stay and it's just new ones being added or ones going in. There's a lot of churn. We'll get to this idea that food policy councils are part of this ecosystem. And as part of that, they're adapting to conditions. And so we can talk about it as adaptive governance. So some of this is churn, where some go away and they are rebirthed. I think like the Cleveland Cuyahoga Food Policy Coalition is a good example of that. Think of our own as a good example of that. Some of the states have more than others, and we can talk about that later if you're interested. To give you a sense of what these organizations are like, I want to just give you some data that we have on these organizations. Okay, so they're structured. They're structured differently. Nationally, it's most common for them to be housed in another nonprofit. That's not true in Ohio, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. But despite only having 26% embedded in government, almost all food policy councils have some relationship with government, whether being directly embedded, or what's most common is having members of local government, either through the administration or electeds, on councils themselves. There's all these different ways of being supported by local government. That we see across the country. Regional food policy councils are a little bit different. They tend to focus more on your processing and distribution and economic development, but there's fewer of them. The most common are ones that are based in cities or counties. And so it won't surprise you then to see what they prioritize as far as the policies they work on, right? Oh, actually run a statistical model to do that, which wasted my time. But it's now out there in the literature. It's the obvious. Okay, and so let's look at their resources. The message is clear, folks. These are under-resourced groups. Yeah, 36% of council has some paid staff. This might be like a part-time person, etc. All right, so the Ohio Food Policy Network comes in. We are, in part, a network for those local councils, okay? For organizations that seek to change Ohio's food system to better Ohioans. And we have folks that work in local food policy councils. We also have folks that work at the state level that are interested in advancing Ohio food system for Ohio. And I love, it's like almost like Zingerman's wrote the value statement for Ohio Food Policy Network. We believe in strong communities, vibrant family farms, justice and equity, healthy people, sustainable ecosystems, thriving local economies, celebration of culture, and informed and engaged eaters. And we've existed in some form since 2012. But the history goes back a little further, back to 2007, when the state had a state-level food policy council. And when that went away after Governor Strickland lost that next election, the network came about as a way to keep communicating between groups that were interested in the state of Ohio. And your own Dr. Brittany Jones is, oh yeah, she's not on the photo right here, but she's also the chair of this network. And we meet annually. Who's been to a summit? Ohio Food Policy Summit. Okay, a few of you. Who's on our listserv? Oh, you guys should be on the listserv, yeah. We're hoping to move this summit around the state. We'll see if we can make that happen. We conduct virtual convenings online to celebrate work in Ohio, to celebrate and connect what's going on around the country to Ohioans. We have a process where members can ask for a policy to be supported by our network. And who's a member, would you ask? Well, we consider anybody who's engaging with us through our listserv, through our meetings, through our virtual convenings, to be part of that network. Our network has a policy framework, and some councils, like the Cincinnati Regional one, use this framework for their own region. You know, local farms are the bedrock of Ohio. The ability to consume nutritious food is a key determinant of social health. Strengthen local and regional food supply chains will increase resilience and economic growth for communities, and institutions create and expand markets by what they purchase and their decisions. We often ask what's missing, and so this last summit we did a whole exercise of what's missing, because you might be like, hey, there are some things missing. And so we're going to be updating our framework. In Ohio, we have about 20 active councils. Now we've got Lucas County up there, right? And I think it's because there's some talks going on, right? Things happening. We have about 20 councils, and let's see, most are grassroots organizations, but we do have some that are embedded in government. Only one of those councils has no relationship with local government. Most do. The organizational priorities shouldn't be very surprising: networking, education, community engagement. The policy priorities shouldn't be surprising either. They're listed up there. Most have budgets under 10,000 to budgets over 100,000. And so this is just a snapshot of what's going on in our state. Going back to this idea of the ecosystem, what we've learned, I'm working with a community of practice of 11 regional food policy councils from across the country right now. 9 of the 11 are doing some sort of adaptation to the way that they operate, trying to make their practices more democratic, trying to make their practices more equitable, changing the organizational structure to better meet what's happening in a community. So this idea of an evolution of a food policy council is actually necessary, I think, because this is a new policy area as we figure things out, right? Needing to be flexible and adaptive. And this ever-evolving set of relationships does translate into accomplishments. And I thought I'd just pick out a couple of councils from Ohio. Before I talk about Cincinnati, though, a lot of research shows that there's some elements that are related to success of food policy councils. Strong local government support. Labor devoted to the council, that can be volunteer labor or it can be paid labor. Broad distribution of leadership and community buy-in in a non-hierarchical way. that collaboration, a systems approach. Like, if you're only going to work on hunger, or you're only going to work on environment, you don't need a food policy council, okay? These are for cross-sector issues, those wicked problems. And an interest in self-education and an interest in public education. So those are some of the things that are related to successful food policy councils. Cincy, they did a good food purchasing policy with the Cincinnati Public Schools. They're currently working on the intersection between food and climate change planning. Cleveland, I mentioned that, Nick Cheaton, and we're off to the races. Okay, off to the races, that's a metaphor. That's a sports metaphor, yeah.
You're all metaphors.
Cleveland, really when Cleveland started was known as kind of one of the leaders nationally in local food policy, did a lot of work around trying to make agriculture legally permissible on vacant properties and getting water to those properties, but also did a lot of things around one of the original produce for nutrition incentive program also. There's that experimentation that can be done locally. A grant program for food cart vendors. I have to bring up my own local food council that I'm a part of. We started by doing, and I'm going to be wrapping up here, we started with the food policy hour, which is that really unsexy thing in the corner. And it was really to say, given best practices of today, what do we have in place to really benchmark things? And then we said, where's there some energy and excitement? And it happened to be around incentives for healthy eating. And so we did a listening session that then ended up in a pilot program, which is our produce perks, where if someone goes to the farmer's market and is paying with SNAP, they get their dollars matched up to a certain amount. So this was all through the council. But then we stopped and said, you know what? We can't be doing these one-off investments, right? We need to be really thinking about a much bigger plan. And so we did the local food action plan between the city and county. We worked with them on that. And then, did some, everybody has to have I wanted goats to be included here because everyone needs a kid in the backyard. And I can't remember the deal with that joke, but I wanted goats to be included there too. It was unsuccessful. Anyway, we also do things like give out awards to elevate, like local change makers. And the city and county ended up, this is something you can find in the plan. The city and county ended up creating an office and a local food board with 12 board members that works alongside the council. So now we kind of have two food policy councils. And most recently, the council is working on appointing seats to that board, some community equity seats. We're working, we just allocated American Rescue Plan funds to some big projects in Franklin County and Columbus. So if you're unaware of this resource, this is the national network that I was on the advisory board for about a decade. They do a lot of really great work and offer a lot of good services. Go join us. Here's the contact. There's my email. So you can email me. I'm not on social media either, but I do use email. So, food policy councils play an important role in this new policy space as kind of de facto departments of food. They're multi-sector groups that use democratic practices, prioritize issues for change. They have a proven impact on community. And they need to stay nimble with the ever-evolving local conditions. And there's lots of organizations like that around Ohio, and there's a network to connect with them. And a network nationally. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jill. Do you want to do one minute of questions?
Sure, yeah. Yes.
You mentioned early on that 7 out of 10 of the lowest paid jobs were food service related.
Yeah.
But I couldn't help but notice in the priority listing for food policy councils that food labor is one of the lowest
And
priorities.
when I called out labor earlier, no one raised their hand in this room. And if I were to do this in Columbus, it's the same. Oh, we do it. Okay. We do have the same phenomenon. This is a national phenomenon that, for whatever reason, food policy councils don't tend to have people representing labor, and I would say the environment is another one as well. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, not at all. I mean, with so many of the lowest paid jobs being in food service and not a focus, would maybe focusing on that help some of the broader issues where those low paid jobs would maybe have more assistance if that was a priority for those councils?
Yeah, and so we know that whoever sits at that table is influencing what policies are coming up. And so I think that figuring out who it is in the community from food labor to invite, and what will work. I don't like inviting people to a table that's already been framed. So like, what table can you build together? And how can we talk about the issues that we care about? So like, I come to food work really from a democratic mindset. Like, I'm most interested in process. And maybe someone's coming because they're interested in diet-related disease. Maybe someone's interested because they're interested in struggling small farmers. But we have to figure out what that frame is that brings us all together. And so I think we would think like, okay, so what is it about labor? Like, how can we be talking about what we all care about, right? In terms of what they might see value in, how can we build that table together? But yeah, astute observation, spot on. Yeah. Excellent. All right.
Thank you. All right, I think we're going to cap it there. Give one more round of applause for this. It occurred to me very quickly something that I'm very passionate about. Toledo carries the unique distinction of having been both part of Michigan and Ohio in its history. And what a better place to bring Ann Arbor and Columbus together. So thank you both. One more round of applause for Ari.
This is a long day coming for all of us at United Way, but also me in particular. I've spent much of my career in the hunger and food security space, and especially when I was working for a grassroots nonprofit where I was the director, the head fundraiser, the trash person, the peanut butter box lifter. I always felt like I wanted to be having wider conversations, and I know that, especially for our direct service practitioners in the room today, that day-to-day, boots on the ground work that is just endless often doesn't give us the opportunity to put ourselves in spaces or spend enough time in spaces of innovation. Being able to vision and kind of broadcast what we want to see for the community, what we want to see for our organizations, what we want to see for the people who we serve day to day. And being able to spend some more time in that visionary space is why we've invited these folks up today. We're so excited to have our 3 guest speakers. They're going to share each of their programs back to back. And we, of course, want to acknowledge the incredible work that's already being done in this community, the tireless leadership that is exhibited in our community. However, we're so excited to think creatively. And I know that when I get to sit in visionary spaces and really use that creativity, it just brings so much inspiration to me. So I'm going to hand it over first to Kip Curtis. You can all introduce yourselves before the presentation, and we're so excited to hear about your programs today.
All right.
Good morning. Let me advance this. I don't want to use the clicker. Oh, this isn't working. I'm using the clicker. There we go. All right. So I'm Kip Curtis. I'm an associate professor of history. Yes, history is valuable in this space. I teach on the Mansfield campus of the OSU, Ohio State University. And for the past 5 years, I've been building a local food system in Mansfield, Ohio. And that's what I want to tell you about. I do want to build a little bit from what Ari said this morning, beliefs and stories. So I'm going to tell you the story of this project. But I want to frame it in the beliefs that drove it. And it's a belief that I hold about justice. I've thought a lot about justice. I've studied justice in my historical work. And I've come to the conclusion that we don't solve our justice problems only by removing injustices, but we also solve them by creating opportunities. And this project was designed with that idea in mind. The question that I asked going into this was, can we build a system of urban agriculture that can create access, equity, and profit for individuals and households? And I guess my other mantra in the local food system is, first, you need the farmers. If you don't have farmers, you don't have a food system. And our small-scale farmers and our urban farmers are struggling these days. We also are losing farmers at a huge rate nationally. One of the intentions of this program is to create a training program for new entry and beginning farmers into this space itself. So about 5 years ago, I started thinking about how we might make a better urban agriculture system. Before I even got working in Mansfield, the North End Community Improvement Collaborative, my key partner, and I guess I want to apologize in your programs, due to Indiana West Torrance and Ann Wall joining me in this. They had an emergency North End Community Improvement Collaborative is a community development corporation. Their ambition is to do asset-based community development in the community. And for the 5 years prior to my even showing up, Deanna had been working with the community, developing plans, identifying assets, identifying social capital. And the community said one of the things we want is a local food system. We see that as a real opportunity for us. And when I arrived, they had this very robust community gardens program. They built 3 dozen community gardens around Mansfield and Richland County. They put neighborhood members through extension master gardening programs to learn how to do this. And they were beginning to ask themselves, how do we move into the next step? For her, the next step was a food hub. What is a food hub? So back in the classroom, I started working with students, asking the question, how do we create the right-sized urban agriculture site? And the microfarm is what we've come up with. We asked 2 questions about it. One, can it bring enough income, a supplemental income, to reach $30,000 to $35,000 a year? And 2, can it be small enough so that a single farmer or a single farm family can operate this? And so the microfarm system as we've designed, or the microfarm as we've designed it, is a 6,000 to 8,000 square foot farm and microfarm. Half of it is under these high tunnels so that you get 12 months of growing. That's the only way to get up to that $30,000 to $35,000 a year. And we enlist what we call small plot, high yield agriculture. Small plot, high yield agriculture produces 5 to 6 times more crops per acre than traditional field agriculture. So it's an intensive production site. One of the other things we knew as we were looking at it was that these farmers and small farms in general face this huge problem, which is what do I grow, who do I grow it for, how do I market my food? And we knew that a single microfarm on its own with a single farmer wasn't going to be able to meet these goals. And so we started thinking system. And what we came up with was the microfarm system, which was really a food hub, or that more traditionally called cooperative. The idea was you put 10, 12 of these microfarms together, you get enough aggregate out of that so that you actually have a market presence, and you have them organized together into a cooperative, which is doing all of that marketing work, and which is also telling them what to grow and when to grow it, right? So you simplified the work on the farm, and you've created that market so that they can take in the produce. And so this is our imaginary system that we drew over the food deserts in Mansfield. And then in 2018, we pulled together a group of community partnerships, university partnerships, experts around agriculture, horticulture, and we applied for a Foundation for Food and Agriculture, agricultural research seeding solutions grant. And we were successful in doing so. I'm very surprised by this, delighted by it. But what this meant was we could take this idea and put it on the ground. And so those are my farmers in training. We spent 2 years training a group of a dozen new entry beginning farmers. The grant allowed for us to provide each of them with a microfarm kit of their own. We taught them horticultural training, we taught them small business farming, and we taught them how to create and manage a cooperative as well. And so they muscled through 2 years of that. And in the first year, they also each created their own LLC for their small farm, and those LLCs then joined together and created the Richland Grow Up, which is their farmer cooperative. You can find it online. We're selling produce through the Yellowbird Food Shed at this point, among other places. And so this was the mission they came up with for themselves, that they exist to nourish people, build connections, and improve local communities. But again, the foundation of this was working sustainable farmers, was putting dollars in successful farmers' pockets, which is what we often forget to think about in this alternative food movement that we're all a part of. We seem to think farmers just happen, produce just comes, but it just simply doesn't work that way. So we were able to, I'll just show you some of the outcomes. We were able to put several farms into the community itself. This is Growforth, right there in the North End neighborhood. This is Amanda Stanfield's operating farm. She was able to put the farm on 1/3 of an acre quarter of an acre. We have another one, and this is land bank property, so she paid about $250 for the land itself. Really beautiful site. It's beautifying the neighborhood and producing thousands of pounds of produce for the market every year. One of the side benefits of having farmers producing in your community successfully is any farm operation is producing 75% marketable grade A crops and about 25% B or C crops. These are nutritious, healthy, fresh vegetables that the farmers market and buyers aren't going to buy, that we are now giving into the food insecurity system of Mansfield itself. And then this is our crown jewel. This is the Gorman Rupp Brownfield site. This is what it looked like in 2019. It's right in the heart of the North End neighborhood. It stood empty. It had deer, groundhogs, and Canadian geese. And in 2019, we turned it into the NECIC urban farm. We first incubated several of our farmers there before they moved out onto their own farm. But again, a working system. So NECIC is the largest producer in the Richmond grow-op. They're using this farm to produce for them. This farm has now also become a site where we have a weekly farmers market that runs from about June, April or May until just a few weeks ago, bringing in farmers from surrounding Richland County. We have a cooperative relationship with Richland County Corrections, and we have 6 to 8 work-released men from the prison who come over 5 days a week, learning microfarming and getting some experience in the world. Because of that relationship, we were able to reintroduce farming to the prison system, and we now have a fairly significant microfarm on Richland County Corrections grounds, where men who aren't able to leave the work, able to leave the prison, are able to do work there as well. We have a robust farm-to-school program, so not only do we have school kids coming and visiting this site, but we've built a microfarm on the high school, the middle school, and the intermediate school, and we're putting agricultural pathways through Mansfield City Schools themselves. And we have a robust community food waste composting program, so the community can come down to the farm, they can pick up a bucket, they can put their food waste in it, they can bring it back, and we're building soil out of that as well. And so I guess my biggest message here is that, first you need the farmers, first you need sustainable farmers. We know how to train them. This is not new knowledge we put into the system. This is old knowledge that extension wasn't providing in the right order for the longest sustainable time. But once you do, once you have working sustainable farmers, you get all the other elements of a local food system that we often look for, getting kids in the farm, getting the farmers market. We're also able to offer here triple WIC dollars for anyone from the neighborhood who comes down, so fresh food into the neighborhood as well. I've got an article coming out early next year, and it's called First You Need the Farmers. I can't emphasize it enough. First you need the farmers, but once you have working farmers, you can have a successful local food system. Thank you.
Good morning. I think it's still good morning. We've had so much information today. It's fascinating to me to sit in here, and I'm so thrilled to be a participant in this conversation. And so thank you for the opportunity to do so. I'm Zingerman. I'm the president and CEO of SIFT, which is a nonprofit that's based here in Toledo. How many people have interacted with us hopefully? I see a lot of familiar faces, which is awesome. And I'm also seeing a lot of people that didn't raise their hands, so hopefully we'll have the opportunity to engage further. I'm learning from Jill and not going to use the other side. I still can't do it. So just a little bit about our organization, and they told me to try to keep it brief, which is next to impossible for me because there's so many things to talk about. So I am going to try to do my best, but I certainly hope that there's at least some nugget of information that you'll want to reach out and learn a little bit more about. We really focus on trying to bring a combination of things together, whether it's business development, economic development, new technical expertise, new technologies, any of those types of pieces all in one kind of conversation and methodology, because that's when we really see things move forward successfully. And I appreciate what Kip was saying about we still need to be able to have, if we implement implement something, we need to have a plan on how it's going to be long-term, how it's going to sustain itself, how you're actually going to create jobs, what you're going to do with that product, how you're going to sell it, because that's the key. Sometimes there's a lot of really good things and a lot of efforts, but yet they haven't been able to figure that part out, and so it kind of just falls flat a little bit, and then people get a little discouraged. So if we can continue to look at all of those angles, it tends to be a bit more specific or successful. I don't have nearly the cool visual of this as what we saw this morning with nature. I love that so much more. But it really is a lot of different pieces and parts coming together to make this kind of ecosystem work. We function in all of these different spaces, whether it's sustainability and looking at how we can make improvements. We've been doing that from utilizing waste streams more efficiently and effectively to also leading a charge around sustainable food packaging. There's a lot of packaging that is used in the food system, and how can we make things better in that regard? And use it, either make it recyclable or compostable or any of those types of elements, and there's a lot of science and knowledge that needs to go into that to be successful. Always looking at continuing to improve. We can make changes all the time, and I think that was also so well said this morning, not just coming up with new ideas, but then also trying to nurture those and find the right partners to bring to the table to do that. The workforce element, oh my goodness, everywhere we go, we talk and hear about the workforce challenges associated with what any business is experiencing. So how do we do something better in the food space? So we have a high school credential that we're trying to get more teachers to actually talk about food in the classroom again. Whether that's just general culinary or food science specifically, but getting them excited about it. So we do teacher workshops to try to get them to then carry it onto their classroom. And in turn, the kids can get a credential. And we're hoping that instead of asking a young person what they think a career in food might be, they're going to answer differently than just saying flipping burgers or McDonald's. Because currently that's what we hear a lot. No, that's probably what many of them had as their first job, or many of them know people that had that as their first job. But we want to expand that across the board, so that's not the first thing they think about when they think about a food job. And equally, one of the things that we just announced is we stepped up to be the lead the Ohio chapter to the National Farmer Veterans Coalition. Ohio had not had a chapter, which was very disappointing. And so we've started that program to be able to bring veterans to the table. And we have over 1,500 veterans that are already part of the National Coalition in the state of Ohio. And we're trying to bring them in to teach them some of these ag and food and different types of skill sets because it's perfect. And they are so welcoming to having that information to be able to gain some confidence in moving forward and using their skills in a different capacity. And then also we looked at a lot of things around supply chain. COVID put a really big light on some of the issues that we have, whether it's transportation, whether it's packaging, whether it's ingredients. What are we doing? We need to bring those things back around. We need to make decisions and be able to move very fluid. And how do we make those supply chain adjustments? And also then technologies. Technology, sometimes people are like, wow, technology. I'm the last one that really likes operating this, hence the reason why I'm not even attempting this. But there's a lot of technical advancements that are going to make positive changes to what we're doing. It's identifying which ones work the best and which ones have the most potential and then making them happen in the best cohesive fashion. So we're very involved in that area. This is just, anyone that knows us knows we work a lot with food processors. What you might not realize is that we're now working with a lot of manufacturers in this region. And the reason I bring that up is because there's so many pieces to the supply chain that relies on our manufacturers. Again, the packaging element. This section of the state has so much to offer in that regard that if we can keep making improvements all across the board, we're going to have a better, healthier ecosystem across the platform. And finally, one of the things that gets a lot of people excited is our work around food entrepreneurship. I was involved in getting the kitchen established over, I think it's about 18 years ago now. And there is nothing better than being able to walk in the kitchen and see somebody making something they're super passionate about. The smell, the excitement, the aroma. All of these folks bring in their family and friends the first time, and they're like, oh, we're here to make this. And then they get a little overwhelmed, shockingly. But if we can help guide them and we bring the resources to them, we've seen so much success and so much opportunity for really localized growth. The Northwest Ohio Cooperative Kitchen has been able to one of them that we're particularly proud of is Willie's Salsa. So anyone that's had Willie's Salsa, keep eating it. And if you haven't, look for it because it is truly addictive as it says on this package. But it's a nice example of what we try to do is give people the resources. And that's really what we're talking about all day and all morning is building that ecosystem that supports each other. They're all making food products and that's fine. But they can all learn from each other. And so we've had a lot of really good success in making that happen and bringing things to the table so that they can find the answers they need faster to be more efficient and effective. So I just bear with me. I'm hoping that I don't screw this up with my technical capabilities, but I'd like to just share a few. I said it earlier this morning on the stories, and the stories ring true, and there's nothing better than hearing from them, some of their experiences and why they started some of their businesses. So this is hopefully going to inspire you a little bit more on some of the companies that we've had the opportunity to assist.
Ready to go forward in? Oh, we see it all, we wonder, we dream in every color, and we come alive. Together we can find, there's a golden child, ready to breathe.
This is where ideas become reality. If you have that family recipe or concoction that you guys really like. So I made the leap. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. I didn't want to say that, so I jumped right in, and it just kept rolling and rolling and rolling. And here I am, still doing it 10 years later.
This is where our dreams begin.
I got to a salsa making contest with a friend of mine, and it kind of became a spitting match on whose was hotter, mine's hotter, mine's hotter. And my goal was to make a sauce that was not salty and vinegary like Tabasco or Frank's Red Hot, that had a lot of flavor and just an above average heat level. 7 years of trial and error, and I came up with my original tomato-based habanero jalapeno hot sauce.
My father-in-law is from Lebanon. He grew up in Lebanon. All of these recipes are family recipes, which I think is just, it brings a little taste of Lebanon, a whole new culture to the Midwest. And we want to bring our little restaurant recipes from the Midwest nationwide.
We had this family recipe, my mom had it on an index card. Christmas, Thanksgiving, we served, we would mix it up, sausage lengths, start dipping it, and the 3 brothers and my sister, we just started hammering that stuff on everything. And that's how I got the tailgating at the University of Akron with my Zips and then down to the Buckeyes, and it just kind of grew from there.
The Northwest Ohio Cooperative Kitchen, or the NOC, I see it as a launchpad for entrepreneurs. We give them the tools and the resources to develop their product to take the recipe to the market. It's more than just a product that's being produced here, it's a community here, it's an area where there's networking, there's programming, and a lot of the time people that produce here, they might be doing the same thing, but they're always here to help each other out.
Almost gonna happen. That video continues. It's a little too long to play right now for our time constraints, but if you want to hear a little bit more about their individual stories and what they've been able to achieve, that is rolling out on our LinkedIn page just actually today, I think. But the point of showing that was really to be able to kind of communicate, again, the value and how bringing all these resources together in one location helps launch these individual entrepreneurs so much more successfully. This is another one of our just examples. Nate's Nectar has been with us for a while producing, and they make honey products. And how perfect. If you can collaborate with an urban ag location, and they're doing bees, and they're making honey, and then you have an opportunity to go and package it at another location in close proximity, you're building this entire ecosystem in a way that is just very powerful. Not everyone has those resources, and so if you're able to leverage it and able to work together to build things up, to be more successful, we're going to hopefully see more and more examples of this type of thing. Where it's one person, one idea, but it's multiplying across the board for our local communities. So what's next? We are just starting to communicate a little bit more about what we have planned. The Northwest Ohio Cooperative Kitchen, if you're not, I didn't mention, I don't think, is located just north of Bowling Green. So it's fairly close, but I know it's also not terribly convenient for many people within the Toledo limits. And their transportation may be a challenge. They may not have the understanding of kind of what's going on there, so they're a little bit skeptical. They can't just kind of go and see it and feel it easily. So now the new approach is to try to build something here in Toledo. And for anyone that has been around this area that knows the Erie Street Market and what it used to be years and years and years ago, we're hoping to bring it back. So what the plan is for this particular effort is that SIF will be managing what's considered a smart kitchen. And everyone asks me, what is a smart kitchen? Well, it's kind of a cool, weird term, I guess. It's the hopes that we're going to do some things in a smart way, and we're going to learn from any mistakes that have happened in the past. We're going to bring cool, new, smart technology to the table in hopes of getting more kids excited, because that's going to give them something to get their hands on and get inspired by. And then we're also going to put a nod towards the fact that we really are fortunate. There's a lot of technology out there that can make life a little bit simpler. And why not utilize it? Why not embrace it? Why not help it? Or utilize that to help with our workforce challenges whenever that may come and arise. So the Smart Kitchen is going to be located in the bottom pictures, which used to be the old Pepe's restaurant. And it's going to have a food product development lab, so we're going to do some trainings. We're going to get chefs in there. We're going to do some new things. Most of the emphasis, unlike the NOC is focused on retail products, if you saw. Those are things that are all going to the grocery stores. This particular location is going to be focused more on the food service element. So anyone that might have that family recipe, but it's something that they want to either do from a catering perspective, or a food truck, or just kind of a pick up and go kind of program. That's where this is going to be able to help inspire those next wave of businesses. And then the city of Toledo and ECDI are working on the rest of the space, which is going to really reflect and mirror what used to be there with the food hall. So the idea is that then people can take their idea, test run it in our smart kitchen, utilize all the cool resources, and then grow into the food hall, get their customer base excited about what they're doing, build up some sales, build up some visibility, and then hopefully graduate out into our communities to be able to really expand and accelerate what they're trying to do. So we're trying to take some of the philosophy that we've had in the past and that we've been doing for 18 years, and we're trying to apply it in a different way, but doing that in the downtown. And again, hopefully to continue to build upon the excitement and enthusiasm around this food ecosystem here. SIF has been involved in a lot of the urban activities, so I love the things that Kip mentioned, and we've seen some of that, and there's people in this room that are doing some fantastic things around food. If we can all kind of come together and start to really build it up, I think we are going to be unstoppable. So I think that's all I'm going to share. There's contact information on there, but feel free to reach out anytime to learn a little bit more about any of the projects I mentioned.
Good morning. I am Ari Wright, and I am an associate professor and director of nutrition programming at University of South Florida. So how is somebody from Florida here? Well, I really appreciate Wendy and the United Way and David Selinsky for inviting me here to share about a program that is for food recovery and meal delivery. This program is a grassroots program that was initially developed at University of North Florida. And I want to tell you the story of the program because we find that it is a very durable program, one that can flex to other sites and other found seniors that have the greatest nutritional needs and the highest levels of food insecurity. And this program is student-driven, so we utilize the power of our university students. And Kip led off, building on Ari, about some of the values here that went into the development of this program. Number one is, for me, seeing the impact on health that food insecurity has. And nutrition, adequate access to healthy foods is a basic right that too many of our community members do not have. So that's one value. And the second value that really has driven this program is the responsibility of the university to give to the community that they serve. That we share our expertise, our resources with the community. We are partners with the community to make things better. So I really feel strongly in those two values, and that kind of went into what drove this program. So just a little bit about history about the program. When I first went to University of North Florida, I had a wonderful student that approached me. She had just attended a conference on campus kitchens. And campus kitchens, they really aren't at a national level anymore, but they were focused on food waste and some basic nutrition education. And so students would go back to their campuses and develop programs that looked different. You saw one campus kitchen, you saw one campus kitchen. So this student came back. I had just joined the staff, and she was so excited. We talked about how we might do that on our campus. So it initially began with working with our University Hospital Food Service and recovering food from that, from the cafe, and then repackaging it into healthy meals that we then delivered to several agencies in the community. We worked with an HIV clinic and also a homeless shelter. And so the meals would go to the clinics and shelters. Case managers there would know who was in the most need and distribute the meals from there. So fast forward, we were going along for about a year or two, and I was in a community meeting on senior hunger. And they were talking about 1,000 seniors in the Jacksonville community were on a wait list for Meals on Wheels. They qualified, but there weren't enough resources in our programming at the time. And I just was blown away. I mean, that really just pulled at my heartstrings. And so I thought, how could we be a part of that solution? How might we flex this basic model to meet the needs of some of our older adults? So one of the first things, and I talk about ingredients, and I'll review that, but one of the first ingredients that needed to change was the food supply. The food at our cafe area agency on aging, and they helped us, they shared with us the wait list for Meals on Wheels. And so we prioritized from there. We looked at who had the highest nutrition score on the initial assessment of the senior, and then also who had the lowest income. Now, of course, then the challenge was we also had to put that into the map and have nice delivery routes, but challenges that we learned to overcome. But that's really how we began this Meals on Wings program. And you might want to know, why do we say Meals on Wings? Well, the University of North Florida's mascot is an osprey, and so, it's a bird wing, and that's how we developed our Meals on Wings program. The program was going along very nicely for about a year. We were serving 25 to 30 homebound seniors, mostly home to home, and we served twice a week, 3 meals each time, and then COVID hit. And of course, our university shut down, and the cafes were shut down, so there was no food supply. We weren't allowed on campus. So the first thing I had to do is, because we had a relationship, we cared for those 30 homebound seniors that we were already serving, and there was a dramatic rise in people that needed that kind of help. So I had to lobby with the university president to be considered essential, and he allowed staff and faculty involved in the program could come on campus. Students were not. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But then we needed to benchmark with Meals on Wheels National about how were they delivering safely, and making sure we had all of those precautions, because the worst thing we could do is take COVID to our homebound seniors. And then we needed food. We had more demand. We needed food. And so with the hospitals, who were shutting their doors, I just think that the compassion and how people, you remember those early months of COVID, people were just really pulling together. So we were able to not only be allowed into the hospitals to recover the food, the 2 hospitals, but then we began to expand to 3 and 4, and eventually 6 hospitals allowed us to keep coming in. I always joke that some it was we had to go in and have our temperature check and go up and get the food. Others, we were exchanging food on the loading dock, a little bit like a drug deal, but we got it. And so, to overcome that initial no students allowed on campus, we kind of flexed it a little bit, and we'd have the students go get the food, go recover the food. They would come and drive into the parking garages. So technically not on campus. We would go meet them, grab the food, take it up, assemble it, the faculty and staff, and then we would go and meet a new group of students out of the parking garage that would then deliver to the homebound seniors. So we went from, in the first couple weeks of COVID, we went from 30 to 100 to 150 by the end of the summer, and by December we were serving 200 seniors in the community. And that was made possible. What I'm talking about is a very grassroots program, and it's one that you build, and for us this is what we saw: you build it and they come. The support, as the word began to spread about this program, more and more people wanted to be a part of it, wanted to help in any way that they could. And so, we received, I remember our area agency on aging, they said, "Hey Lauri, we got some toilet paper." Do you remember? It was gold at that point. So we were able to go and not only take meals, but we were able to take toilet paper to our seniors. Then the American Heart Association said, we'd like to get education information and blood pressure cuffs out, because they might not be checking some nonprofit to nonprofit work going on. And I think from, one thing that I always say, another value here is about sustainability, especially in COVID, and especially some universities can sometimes have a reputation of treating the community as a petri dish, and not providing sustainable programs. That was a huge value to me. And to ensure that we could make this sustainable, we couldn't be as, internally grant funded. It was only with my great help from David and Foundation and securing monies from, we received monies from insurance companies. Humana has been our big benefactor. That allowed us to really expand eventually to 250 seniors, which seems to be the right numbers for us. And then ensure that we have sustainability, that we are never going to say, I'm sorry, we're not providing this program anymore. And in fact, that Humana support allowed us to take this model and flex it at 2 other university settings. So we are now in partnership with the University of Kentucky, providing them some pilot funds and advice, as well as Lehman University in the Bronx. We're talking about flex. Instead of, we have a refrigerated truck that we take out to deliver the meals and recover. They're using the subway. But that's how robust this type of program can be. It can flex based on the ecosystem, right? Every good researcher puts some outcomes around this, and this is what is really important. Is we knew it would make a difference, but we wanted to demonstrate this for potential donors. So we looked at our participants, and we looked at their food security level, their nutritional status, their protein and calorie intake. And because we all know that those meals are more than just food, that touch point with the student volunteers makes such a big difference. We also looked at participants' overall well-being and their loneliness score. And not surprising, being on the program just 3 months, all of these areas improved. They had higher nutritional status. They were taking in clinically significant more calories and proteins. I look to my dietitian friends here. I mean, we're talking about, over 200 calories per day and about 30 grams of protein. I'm not sure the exact numbers, but that is clinically significant. That is helping their overall health. And then that less food security, they aren't worrying as much. So that's got to feed into some of that well-being, and then those touch points with the students. That loneliness improved too. We also looked at our students, and we had students. We were blessed with we have dietetic students at the undergraduate and graduate level, but we had nursing students participate. We had environmental studies, sociology. Nice story about the students from sociology. When COVID hit, they couldn't come back on. Everybody was remote, but they wanted to know, is there still some way that we could help? So as part of the class assignment, they wrote letters. They were pen pals with our participants. And in our older adults, that means so much to get a handwritten note of support. And so those students, when we look to that volunteer experience, and it's not a one-time, we ask for a semester if possible, but what we looked at was their empathy levels and social responsibility levels. Already high, right? They're volunteers, many are in healthcare. But this volunteer experience improved both of those levels significantly. We knew there was more to the story, and so we asked students, we did some qualitative work with them, and they talked about how they really helped build their teamwork, because the food comes in, and it's very exciting. All these foods come in, and we get so excited. Oh, there's this beautiful broccoli, and oh look, that would pair so this chicken, only nutrition people get like so excited about. Aren't those colors beautiful? You know? But the students would get in there and they would work together about, well, you know, I think that vegetable will go better with this one. And so it built teamwork, it built leadership. We fund 2 student leaders that kind of oversee the volunteers. And then we also give the volunteers gas cards because they're using their vehicles to go out and get that. So it built leadership. And then the biggest thing is they talk about making the classroom come to life. So they're learning about food safety. And then they're going into this volunteer experience and they are, you know, ensuring that we're not going, you know, the time and the temperature. And always keeping in mind is that sweet little lady that they've known for a semester, they would never want to do anything to make her sick. So, you know, it really does help that experiential learning. So this program, I really, you know, there are so many opportunities. I already kind of talked about the key ingredients of you need, you know, you really do need the hospital and that willingness from hospitals. And what I find is it's important to talk to people from where they're coming from. So many people want to do good, but the system that they're in right now might set up barriers. So how can we talk to them? And with the hospitals, one of the first concerns we have is liability. Well, what happens if someone gets sick? Well, I have a little sheet that I've prepared on the Good Samaritan Act that protects us on both sides as long as we're doing due diligence. So, and then another thing that, you know, I've learned from my food service managers is that sustainability is often in their goals. And so talking to them about how you know, this can help you meet your goals by donating the food.
I can't wait for you all to hear from Dr. Brittany Jones of United Way talking a little bit about our results-based accountability model, because that's about the collaboration, how it works together, how we measure together, and then understand where the gaps are, where the impact is, and how we make dollars go further in our community. So thank you for your time this morning. I hope you enjoy lunch and getting to chat with each other. And again, these panelists, their dreams, their vision, what Ari is going for, what Jill, all of us together. Thank you for what I like to think of as the drop the mic day. And we all start working together in a very different way. If you don't see somebody here that you think you should, maybe they started their vacation early for Thanksgiving, but maybe they didn't. Let us know. Make sure they come the next time, because there are a lot of names on that list, and this is the Texan in me being a little bit of a gunslinger. But if you chose not to be here, but you work in a space, in a collaborative environment around food, I'm sorry. That's a shame. I'm sorry you weren't here. Let's get you next time. Let's make sure you're here, because all of you're working really, really hard. We appreciate it deeply and look forward to what the future holds. But we'll need more at the table. So thank you very much.